We have two big stories today. I hope you'll stay tuned for the second. But the first one is Alex Jones's court case has reached a verdict. The judges ruled that Alex needs to pay about $4.1 million to a few parents from the Sandy Hook tragedy, and we'll do a deep dive on it. So Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis had asked jurors for $150 million in compensation for actual damages, saying Jones's portrayal of the 2012 Sandy Hook elementary school shooting as a hoax meant to justify a government crackdown on guns, and the parents as liars or collaborators, inspired harassment and death threats from Jones's followers and made it impossible to heal from the tragedy. So since they asked for $150 million, Alex Jones is reportedly celebrating this as a major victory for truth, considering $4 million's a lot less than $150 million they were asking for. What does this mean for free speech? What were the actual charges? Is it over? Will he file for bankruptcy? What do I think? These are questions I'll answer during this live stream, but first I want to play this clip from the court case because it's pretty wild.
Even within the past couple months, is your allegation that government officials are aiding in pedophilia, child trafficking, and the grooming of children, right?
You mean like what Jeffrey Epstein did with the Clintons?
And before we get to the second story, I want to play these clips of Rochelle Walensky, Joe Biden, and Rachel Maddow all misleading the public, hundreds of millions of people, about the efficacy of the COVID vaccine, as we ask ourselves, should they face a court case like Alex Jones for being so blatantly wrong and misleading the public? Let's watch.
We're not in a position where we think that any virus, including the Delta virus, which is much more transmissible and more deadly in terms of unvaccinated people, the various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data.
Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else.
Now, the second story of the day is the Biden administration officially declared monkeypox outbreak as a public health emergency in the U.S. We're going to talk about it and also look at the record high stock prices from Bavarian Norden AS, who created one of the monkeypox vaccines that was approved in 2019. The big pharma cash cow keeps rolling, and we'll talk about it. Thanks for being here, folks. We're about to go live now. It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the live Dream Rare Podcast, the most underrated podcast this side of the Mississippi. Today, the first story we're going to talk about is the Alex Jones case. I guess the judge ordered him to pay about $4.1 million to a few of the family members from the Sandy Hook shooting. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you what both sides are saying, do my best reports. I have mainstream stuff from Austin, CNN, Washington Post, just to get a feel for what they're saying. And then we're going to talk about what Alex and his camp's saying, and what, more importantly, possibly, what this means for free speech in this country, the First Amendment, and if they're being fair. And then we're going to talk about the monkeypox officially being declared an emergency by Biden and what that means. But before I start, I do want to say, when it comes to, Rochelle Walensky, Rachel Maddow, Joe Biden, I know this is different than the Sandy Hook thing, but it's like they went on television and misled the entire nation into thinking that the COVID vaccine would mean that you have complete immunity and you wouldn't get it or spread it. I mean, I just showed you the clips of it. So I'm just curious, at what point, are people allowed to, try to sue them? I mean, I'm not an overly litigious person, but I just find it fascinating that they've made quite a few mistakes over the past couple of years, but it's all good. We'll talk about it. So I'm going to start with CNN Business just to get a feel for what mainstream media is saying and how they're breaking down the case. They say jury finds Alex Jones caused $4 million in damages to two Sandy Hook parents. Right-wing talk show host Alex Jones will have to pay the parents of Sandy Hook shooting victims a little more than $4 million in compensatory damages, a jury decided on Thursday. The award from jury was far less than what the plaintiffs Scarlett Lewis and Neil Heslin had asked for. They were asking for $150 million, and the fact that it was $4 million, I'll just go here. It says that Neil and Scarlett are thrilled with the result and looking forward to putting Mr. Jones's money to good use. But also Alex Jones is considering it a victory, according to CNN. He's celebrating it as a major victory for truth, thinking that they would shut him down. I don't know how much Alex is making, but I would assume that he has such a big audience and people love him that he can probably raise that money pretty easily. Like the right-wing audience will, and I'm not saying he's every right-winger, but people are very loyal. So if you're facing big troubles, I think people will support you more. So I would say overall $4 million is a lot of money, but compared to $150 million, that's nothing. So it seems like Alex is somewhat happy about that, although I don't know. You'll have to watch his show if you really want to know his take on it. So this is what did he get charged for? Because I was trying to find it, and I kept seeing conspiracy theory, blah, blah, blah. And I get it, but I'm like, I was trying to figure out as like a, news analyst and somewhat journalist, I was like, what exactly were the charges? Because this is going to mean, like, was it defamation? Was it this? Like, were they reaching? So if I get to it, I'm going to just, get to this article. This is, I guess, the Austin American Statesman, some sort of Austin newspaper. They're like one of the only ones I could find covering what the actual charge was. They said before the hearing closed on Thursday, jurors were informed that Jones and Free Speech Systems, which is one of his companies, defamed, so they're calling it defamation, defamed Heslin in a 2017 InfoWar report that questioned Heslin's claim that he held his dead son and saw the bullet wound to his head after shooting. Heslin testified that he made the statement in an NBC interview in hopes of stopping Jones's campaign to protect the legacy of his son, who died a hero by yelling "run" when the gunman paused. 9 students fled. Jesse did not. That's the story. Jurors were also asked to determine the amount of money they would fairly compensate Heslin for past and future damages to his reputation and past and future mental anguish caused by the defamatory reports. They awarded $50,000 for past damage and $10,000 for future damage of his reputation and $50,000 for past anguish. Jurors also told that Jones and his company were inflicted intentional emotional distress on Heslin and Lewis by repeatedly portraying the Sandy Hook shooting as a hoax. From 2012 to 2018, when filed suit, each parent was awarded $1.5 million for past mental anguish and $500,000 for future mental anguish. According to the jury charge, this intentional infliction of emotional distress occurred when defendant acted recklessly with extreme and outrageous conduct beyond all possible bounds of decency that regarded an atrocious and utterly intolerable in a civilized society. Mental anguish was defined as emotional pain, tormenting, and suffering. So that was, I guess, the official charges was defamation and infliction of mental anguish. I mean, I don't know the exact legal, way to put that, but that's what they're saying. He inflicted so much mental anguish and so much damage to their reputation, defamation, etc., that they needed all that money to heal or whatever. Here's my take on it, because I know reading other reports, they were also citing the fact that Alex Jones basically incited his audience to, send people nasty messages, etc. And here's what I want to say. I do think accuracy is important. I do think, as somebody who has listened to Alex Jones for a while, I think just being honest, I think his toothpaste is pretty solid. He sells a lot of decent products. And, I think in general, over the course of history, he's been right on a lot of big picture stuff. But I do think he gets carried away sometimes, and he tends to, I would say skirt the reality and just kind of exaggerate, in my personal opinion, of somebody who listens to him and doesn't hate him. On that note, I mean, it's a very slippery slope, just to play both sides and be fair. It's a very slippery slope to say that your audience inflicted anger and they ended up hurting people, so you're responsible for what your audience did. Very slippery slope, because in my opinion, listening to Alex Jones, he's definitely a little wild. He's not a normal reporter. He's Alex Jones. Everybody knows who he is. To me, Rachel Maddow, CNN, and when I listen to them, I think that they're inspiring hate. I think in some cases they're even inspiring people to want to do bad things in the physical world. But where do you draw that line? Can words equal violence? This is a very slippery slope. So if you're going to say Alex Jones defamed these people, defamation is something that they can handle themselves, and they did. But if you're going to say that Alex Jones, and some of these reports are saying that from what I read, Alex Jones inspired his audience to do bad things that are illegal. And even though he didn't technically do it, he inspired his audience to cause death threats and hate. That to me, you look at some of these shooters of like the baseball game when they shot Steve Scalise, when you look at some of these like mass murders and people who've done things like, go after Kavanaugh, attack Dave Chappelle at shows and stuff, it's like you could say that the mainstream media is inciting violence in these people. I would say Alex is an extreme speaker. So if you're going to make that case for Alex, like he definitely is an emotional, hypes people up and stuff. He's not like the calmest person I've ever met in my life, far from it. You could make that same case with these mainstream media people, because I would say the hate that they have in their heart, at least equals or in some cases exceeds Alex Jones on certain topics. So it's a very slippery slope that I don't agree with, because I do think if you make a threat, you should be held accountable for it. If you do something violent or illegal, you should be held accountable for it. But to say that they're inspiring their audience to do something, CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, I don't know that anybody has created more hate, more division, and more anger in this country than them. And as somebody who's listened to Alex Jones quite a bit, I don't even listen to him anymore, just because I've determined that, I'm not in that zone right now. And, I do find that he does get a little carried away and exaggerate to make a scene. So I'm just, it is what it is. Like, I just don't feel like listening to it right now. But overall, like, if I could be completely outside my own head and like take what Alex says and what the mainstream media says, Alex is wild and he definitely hypes people up, but I would say the media is worse. That's just my opinion. I think mainstream media is way worse than Alex Jones, and I think that, they're just more sneaky about it. You know what I'm saying? They're more passive-aggressive with the ways that they instill hatred and evil in people. And, I don't think they'll ever get held to the same accountability that Alex got held to. So I think it's a very slippery slope, without rambling on, to say that you inspired your audience to do death threats, because I think mainstream media inspires that in their audience every single day. With that being said, where do you cross the line of defamation? This is something that free speech doesn't cover. You have the freedom to say what you want, but I guess, in America in the last couple of decades, you don't have the freedom to defame and libel somebody. So, where does that cross the line? Let me give you an example. It's like and I'm going to use two extreme examples, just because that's where you got to go in order to push the line. If you go to Germany, Holocaust denial, like denying the Holocaust, the most extreme thing you could do in many countries, is actually a crime. So there is a Jewish woman, I believe, still in prison in Germany, because even though she's Jewish and is elderly, she questions the official narrative, and they put her in prison in Germany, right? That's like a real crime in most countries, in a lot of countries, definitely Germany. In America, you can do that and you will get a lot of social backlash. They'll probably take your bank accounts away. They'll probably, shame you into poverty, but it's not technically, I believe, a chargeable crime. You get what I'm saying? And this is something where it's like, where do you draw the line of defamation and not? Technically, if these Sandy Hook parents can say, well, Alex Jones, questioned a narrative that of people dying that affected my family, and because he did that, he hurt my feelings and also hurt my reputation and hurt, me and put me at risk, so now he has to pay. I guess a family who survived the Holocaust could do the same thing according to this lawsuit and say, well, now, even though for decades this has been, although very shameful in the public, this has not technically been a hate speech crime. We don't have the same laws that England and Germany do. So you get what I'm saying? It's really skirting the lines of like what you can and can't do, and I think it's a very slippery slope. To be 100% fair, I think people need to watch what they say. I think both sides of media, especially left-wing media, but also a lot of like truthers and, quote-unquote conspiracy theorists, I do think a lot of people get carried away. And I'm not saying question everything, because a lot of stuff is actually BS that we're being taught, and there's no doubt about it. But I believe in order to be a truther, you got to tell the truth, and you got to say when you know something and when you don't. And I do think, just like on the right wing, there are a lot of people who are not interested in accuracy. They're more interested in, like, you know, their team winning than they are with being completely accurate, because they know they're on the right path, and then they're just like, whatever, I'm a moral person, so I can say this because I'm more truthful than the media. You know, I think left-wing media is even worse, and they just are like passive-aggressive, and they act so professional about it. So when an expert lies, it's somehow different than a conspiracy theorist lying. So I think the mainstream media are the biggest conspiracy theorists and the most powerful conspiracy theorists in our country. And I do think that both sides need to do a better job of being accurate. I mean, whether it's legal or not, just from a moral standpoint, the truth is the truth. And if you want to be a decent person and be a good journalist or analyst or whatever you are, I think you should value accuracy, which I think, you know, the left-wing media does not value at all, and a lot of right-wing media doesn't value it also. So I do think people need to be more accurate. However, you know, I don't know. In my opinion, it was better pre-2016 when, you know, both sides were allowed to really have more free speech, and I felt like it got worked out better at that point. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just how I feel. And now I feel like mainstream media, big pharma, and a lot of these global leaders have partnered with, you know, big tech, and they've partnered with major corporations. And now what you have in this country is the experts are getting sloppier, Fauci's getting sloppy, Walensky's getting sloppy, Biden's getting sloppy, MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post are getting extremely sloppy, because they have this like elite status where they are the trusted news sources. Really what you see is a two-tiered system in this country where they're allowed to do conspiracy theories, they're allowed to lie, they're allowed to push the Overton window their way. But if the right wing does the same or half of what they do, they get charged or in trouble. So I do think that it's being, I guess, implemented completely unfairly. And I do also know, to be fair, that CNN and Washington Post, like with the Nick Sandmann thing, they have been held accountable. They did lose a lot of money. I don't know how much. So it does go both ways. You know, it's not like they never get held accountable. Alex Berenson won his thing to get back on Twitter. Nick Sandmann cashed out apparently a lot of money because they lied about him. And that's a question I got to ask you, because I could see it going both ways. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in free speech. I do think you should be able to question historical events and in general, because if you're not allowed to question stuff, now you are giving a monopoly of the narrative to the government and big tech, and then they can lie and do stuff, and you're not allowed to even question it. But on the other hand, you know, I do think people should be accurate, and, you know, I would not want to be defamed by CNN. You know, it's like they could ruin my life in a second by lying about me, and millions of people, you know, it is a thing. And Nick Sandmann, I think right-wingers supported Nick Sandmann. They didn't say, oh, it's free speech, they're allowed to lie about you. People said, no. You know, they defamed him, and they need to pay the price. So we'll see. Overall, I do think that Alex Jones will be fine with this $4.1 million. We'll see if it goes to like the Supreme Court. Maybe it's going to be a speech issue. But I do have to say this as well. The two parents who sued Alex Jones, you know, I went and looked up their videos, because the Sandy Hook thing just kind of went over my head. I never even really, I mean, I obviously knew what happened, and it was sad, but I never really looked into it that much, or like, what Alex was doing wasn't my thing. But I looked at the two parents that were involved in it, you know, and I'm trying to figure out what I could say. And they chose, and I'm not saying it's the wrong decision, because they're allowed to as parents, they chose to go public, and they chose to do interviews. I know the father who sued Alex went live on CNN, and I watched that interview. And I have to say, you know, as fairly as possible, everybody grieves differently. Some people cry hysterically. Some people are very composed. Some people cry off camera and they compose themselves on camera. You know, I've been to multiple funerals in the last couple months, and I've watched people read eulogies, and it's really sad. Some people break into tears, and it's very sad, and some people can hold it together. So I have to be fair and be like, everybody deals with grief differently. But it's like these parents, they put themselves in the spotlight. In my personal opinion, I'm not saying they're lying or anything, but their appearance is a little, you know, bizarre to some, and maybe that's just how they deal with grief. And, you know, I guess I don't really, you know, how far did Alex go? He probably went too far and probably said things he can't claim and got himself in trouble. But this is a very slippery slope where it's like, you know, if Donald Trump is in a court case and he's, something bad happened to him, but you don't like Trump and you decide to say that you think he's partially lying or something, where do you draw the line of public opinion? Like when the O.J. Simpson court case, like a lot of people thought he did it. Some people thought he didn't do it. I get, like, obviously this is a different topic, but when you go public, it's one thing if you're staying private, but when you go public and start doing interviews, at what point are people allowed to say what? I don't know. It's like, I've watched left-wingers say that the, border is a Holocaust and we're killing a bunch of Mexicans and we're so bad. I've watched them lie and say that Ron DeSantis is killing people in Florida. I mean, is that not defamatory? Can he sue? Like, where does this go? Because I don't like to use lawyers. I try to avoid it as much as possible, whether people saying something to me or vice versa. But it's like I've watched like equally defamatory stuff to major figures where people are acting as if they're killing millions of people when they didn't do anything. I mean, that's pretty bad. People will laugh at the graves of right-wingers that they don't like when somebody's family member dies. On the conservative side, I see a lot of left-wingers say some very evil, vile stuff that inspires hate and in some cases violence. But it's not a lawsuit. It's just a poor opinion and somebody that has an evil spirit that is not being very thoughtful about someone's personal tragedy. I don't know. I guess I'm going to leave it at this, but Alex is paying $4.1 million. Some people think that, that's not fair. Others think it is fair. I would say overall he's probably pretty happy because that's not as much as the $150 million. It was a very bizarre court case. Washington Post reported that Sandy Hook lawyers say Alex Jones's attorneys accidentally gave them his phone contacts, and there's this video where they say that Alex's lawyer by mistake gave the phone, contents to the opposition lawyers. Something about, like, this whole court case is kind of crazy, and apparently maybe Alex's lawyer is just not good or they're lying. I don't really know, but overall, I guess my take on it's this. I can see both sides of the story, and I'm not playing the fence. I'm just honest. I'm someone who values accuracy way more than most left-wing and right-wing media, and I find that a lot of people do sloppy jobs, and I don't, just from a moral perspective, I don't think you should lie, and you should do a better job to be accurate. Like, everybody's just slinging out whatever just because they want to win the sports game, and I don't like it. But on another hand, I feel like, in some cases he's getting a raw deal because this is going to open up a whole new wormhole, and apparently anybody that's ever involved in any tragedy ever can apparently possibly, under the same context, sue somebody. I don't know. Where does this end? What if, my grandfather served in the war and died in World War II, and someone questions the narrative of World War II. Can I now sue because they're hurting my reputation? Or if I do a CNN interview and put myself out there publicly and somebody calls me a liar based on something I'm saying, can I then sue because they hurt, that's ruining my reputation? I just don't know where this ends, and it definitely seems like a very slippery slope, obviously. But just to wrap it up, defamation is not new. Right-wingers benefit from this all the time. Left-wingers benefit from this also. We've watched Nick Sandmann win. We've watched Alex Berenson get back on Twitter. So I've seen it go both ways, and it's not always the fairest trial like that I've seen. I guess it depends who the judge is, how they rule it, because free speech is a very, not only slippery slope, but very gray area, because there are certain things that you're not allowed to say, and they're constantly being challenged in court. So we'll see where this goes. We'll see if it gets appealed. We'll see if they try to come for more money. But $4 million, I would think Alex could raise that pretty quickly with a bunch of his audience, because he sells. Real quick before I move on to the next story, I want to say, this is something I have to compliment Alex Jones on. The products he sells, he sells some weird products in my opinion, but he sells a lot of holistic stuff, a lot of supplements, a lot of like organic, or maybe not organic, just like toothpaste that is like more holistic than normal toothpaste. In my opinion, you could tell a lot about somebody outside of his antics and mistakes. You could tell a lot about somebody based on what they're willing to sell you, in my opinion. Alex Jones, compare what he sells to Fox News or CNN. They'll sell anything on those networks. You know what I'm saying? They'll sell pharmacy pills. They'll sell fast food. You know what I'm saying? You look at all these celebrities and athletes that I like. They'll sell Subway sandwiches. They'll sell McDonald's. It's like most celebrities are just like, financial prostitutes. They'll sell literally anything to make money. They'll sell you something that they wouldn't even eat or use themselves just to make money. I'm not saying Alex isn't a salesman. He is an aggressive salesman. Sometimes my critique of Alex is I think he is willing to exaggerate and skirt the truth and just make everything a scene all the time and just sell, because I do think similar to Trump, he's not wrong all the time, but he does value business more than he values the truth, in my opinion, sometimes. However, as much of an aggressive salesman as Alex is, he does sell, in my opinion, better products than mainstream media, and I think that says a lot about his ethics, that he's willing to look for stuff that's healthier for his audience versus these mainstream medias that will literally sell any sort of crap just to make $1. So I've always respected him, even though he's aggressively selling, sometimes too much. I've always respected the fact that the products he sells are way better, in my personal opinion, way better than the garbage that they'll sell you in mainstream media. So like we always talk about here, change yourself to change the world. And if everybody has such an issue with Alex, it's time to self-reflect, because a lot of these media sources, it's not saying that Alex couldn't be better. He obviously could, but you guys are not the shining heroes that you think you are. You guys sell a lot of garbage, and many of these, biggest critics of him in the mainstream media are, in my opinion, a net negative on the world and have done more damage, caused more wars. You think what he did was bad? What do you say to these mainstream media outlets that have started wars that have killed millions of people? Are they sorry? Do they get sued into oblivion for it? They've lied us into the Iraq war, Afghanistan war. Some of these news sources have millions of people's blood on their hands. So it's like, this is all I'm saying. Change yourself to change the world. Feel free to critique Alex. Feel free to hold him accountable and say what you think about, certain things that he said and certain damage he's caused to certain people. But look in the mirror, because when push comes to shove, I would say Alex's biggest critics, 9 times out of 10, have caused much more damage on a world scale. It's like when they critique some right-wing blogger, like a different one, and it's like, do you know who you are? Do you guys know what you've done over the past 30 years? Real quick, someone said Alex Jones is a test case. This does seem to be like something. I'm not saying it's planned or anything, but it does seem to be the intro into how much they can quash criticism of certain events. And as Jen Psaki said, I'm not talking about this shooting. I'm just saying, as Jen Psaki said, there are events that are, that happened in this world. Look at the Gretchen Whitmer FBI plot, where it ended up being FBI agents who incepted the plan. I'm not saying that this happened here, but, you don't want to make a world where you can't question anything, because whether Trump's in office or Biden's in office, you want the ability as an American citizen to question your government, question police forces like Uvalde, and question narratives. I mean, be accurate. This is our responsibility. Be accurate. Don't exaggerate and lie and hurt people based on lies. However, this is all a very slippery slope that could lead to us just not being able to talk about anything, which happened in 2020 already. I don't have to imagine a world where it happened. In 2020, they quashed criticism of the CDC, of Big Pharma, of the government, and of our new status as prisoners. We couldn't question that for 2 years, and I'm still having trouble. I'm still being censored on Instagram. Now I'm going to lose thousands of dollars. I can't put my shop in there because these idiot loser fact checkers from Science Feedback are wrong and dumb. I'm already experiencing that. I have a massive kneecap on my stuff because I am accurately talking about monkeypox, and these little fact checker frauds can't handle it. So whatever. Let me know what you think in the comment section about this court case, whether you agree with the decision, whether you don't. You think he got a raw deal? You think he lucked out? Do you think he exaggerates too much, or do you think he should be allowed to say what he wants and what he thinks, whether it's right or not? Let me know, and I'll try to read some at the end. All right, second story is the Biden administration officially declared a monkeypox outbreak a public health emergency in the United States. It was done in certain states and cities, but now nationally it is officially, I guess, a national emergency thanks to the Biden administration. And it was the Health Secretary Xavier Becerra's emergency declaration, and it will help mobilize more resources to fight the outbreak, which is spread swiftly through the United States through May. So the head of the HHS is the one who declares the emergency. Like I've been talking about recently, under Trump, he put a pharmacy lobbyist / executive, Alex Azar, who was declaring the emergency. He's a big pharma guy. Now you have Xavier Becerra, who I remember from California. I doubt he's any better than Alex Azar, probably just a little bit more of the same, except Democrat. So what does that really mean? I mean, it means a lot of things, but I think, and I'm not trying to point to a conspiracy, I don't know what they'd call it, but it's like Big Pharma is just cashing out on this new normal system where it's like declare emergency, vaccinate, declare emergency, vaccinate, vaccine, scare everybody into oblivion. People are getting fatter, people are getting more hooked on opioids, people are dying of fentanyl, people are less healthy than they've been historically, life expectancy has gone backwards for a few years. The health in this country is not good, and it has a lot more to do with mental health and physical health and the fact that people are eating terribly. The foods that the FDA approves in America are in many cases illegal in other countries. We're being fed absolute garbage that Japan and Europe wouldn't even allow in certain cases. So our health is going down, but here's what they care about. Vaccine. That's all they care about. It's like such a short-sighted health policy that you're not allowed to question. So I decided to, since the monkeypox is the new emergency, I decided to do the research that most people are not doing and figure out when it got approved and who created it. I'm just curious. By the way, I get a lot of views on Instagram now and TikTok, but my podcast and live stream has been lower because I think Facebook's trying to get away from that. Everybody's pumping these reels and stuff, which is fine because I do reels and it's not like I'm suffering. I'm getting like millions of views every day still in a different format. But I do think that this podcast is underrated because it's getting less views than ever because of the short format. But my long format, I think my show has improved greatly over the last year, and I'm way more prepared and have a way better presentation. So I appreciate everybody who shares, watches, and still tunes in because they're trying so bad to get everybody to short content, which is cool. But I do enjoy these long form reports because I put a lot of time into it. So I did this the other day, but briefly, when did the FDA approve the JYNNEOS vaccine that they're using for monkeypox? Was it approved like recently? Is it not approved? It actually was approved by the FDA, but actually in 2019. So a couple years ago, this vaccine got approved, and now this is the company. I'll just hold it up for you guys. It's called Bavarian Nordic. Look at that. Those are all-time highs over here. What do you know? Monkeypox emergency, declare. Business is booming for Bavarian Nordic, which is some sort of foreign country, I believe from Europe, who creates this JYNN EOS vaccine. So business is booming for the vaccine industry. But that's fine. I mean, they have a multi-trillion-dollar cash cow that they're making, but you're not allowed to question their incentives when literally the people declaring the emergency in some cases in the past were pharmacy lobbyist executives who used to work for Eli Lilly. No funny business going on there. Don't look at the revolving door from the CDC to a pharma company, from a pharma company to HHS. It's like one big revolving door between the biggest lobbyist in Washington, Big Pharma, and the government. But don't even think about saying something like that because it's bad. And if you want to follow the science, let's read two tweets from the hypocrisy of how they treated COVID when they were locking down your churches, beaches, gyms, etc., to now with monkeypox. They had no problem shutting down your parents' funeral in some cases. People couldn't even have a real funeral, which is like so sad and so evil. For years, it was hard to have a funeral. But now for monkeypox, they just want gay, kink events to just use your own discretion. We couldn't use our discretion for 2 years under COVID, but with monkeypox, which in my opinion has an even simpler a way to stop it, because COVID is clearly very hard to stop. I mean, they can say what they want, but the vaccine didn't stop COVID. Lockdowns didn't stop COVID. We have data from all over the world that proves that lockdowns and vaccines didn't end COVID anywhere. There's COVID cases in Australia, deaths. I think they just hit record deaths recently. So we have all the data in the world. But with monkeypox, just do as thou wilt. Follow the Aleister Crowley, theory with them. Do as thou wilt. Just, do what you want and just have discretion. Here's two tweets that I found great. Eric Erickson said, they closed churches and schools and left open marijuana dispensaries and liquor stores. They cut us off from our grandparents, but won't cut off gay orgies over stigmatization. There is no reason to listen to public health officials again. This is Eric Erickson saying this, not me. It's a quote tweet. Ariel Davidson said, your child with developmental speech issues, as well as his speech therapist, had to wear a mask all of COVID, but asking for a temporary halt to reckless sex and orgies is offensive. I'm done. So they're trying to walk you through. They had no problem closing churches and schools, but they left open liquor stores and dispensaries. And that year, childhood obesity rose. But they're not even talking about it because how dare you pay attention and use your brain of what health actually means. Ariel said, child with speech development issues, it's a huge problem now. Kids are not able to talk normally. They don't understand facial cues. They've been turned into little experimental prisoners with their faces covered, which is so massive to learning, and especially kids with special needs. They've absolutely decimated millions of kids this way. But yeah, it's just too big of an inconvenience to stop having reckless gay sex all the time. That's hateful, but it's not hateful to treat millions of special needs kids like prisoners for 2 years and not allow them to see facial expressions from their doctor or from their teacher. I mean, these people are literally evil. I don't get that upset very often. I try to keep my cool and be a peaceful person. But I have always been this way, even when I was in elementary school. I was never a bully, but I would always stand up for kids being bullied. I hated to see nerds or somebody that was, I hated seeing people bully. And I was an athlete. I was a tough kid. I would always stand up for people. And I don't care when people do stuff to me. I mean, it annoys me. Don't get me wrong. I defend myself. But nothing ticks me off and nothing bothers me more than watching a bunch of left-wing psychopaths bully Special Olympians and trying to force them to get vaccinated to join the Special Olympics. And you don't even know what these kids are dealing with, and their parents know better. Nothing bothers me more than watching millions of special needs kids who need speech therapists because they're already suffering to a certain extent get bullied by a bunch of CDC people and a bunch of government psychopaths into saying you have to wear a mask. We all in this together, but we're not all in it together. Senator Scott Wiener, Mr. LGBT over here, we're apparently not all in it together with monkeypox because a slight inconvenience to the LGBT community is just too much for them to handle. So let's read two different tweets. Here's Senator Scott Wiener in October of 2020, he said, we need a national mask mandate, period. That's how we beat the virus. So that was his theory back then. Obviously, that didn't happen. We didn't beat the virus, but whatever. He said, we need a national mask mandate, period. That's how we beat the virus. He was full-blown, let's all do this, and let's, everybody slap a mask on, and we'll beat this virus. But what does he think, according to Washington Post, about monkeypox? He said, if people want to have sex, they're going to have sex, said California State Senator Scott Wiener, Democrat from San Francisco, of course, who is involved in the city's monkeypox response. I know people who will normally go to sex parties who will not. People will make their own decisions about their own risk levels. So he's all with mandating national masks, but not with mandating closure of kink parties and orgies, because he trusts the gay community to make the right decision, but he doesn't trust you, your kid, or your special needs kid, to do what they can do to, not fall behind and, lose a lot of years on their education. Here's also his tweet from July 28th, 2022. This is Senator Scott Wiener says, lots of sex shaming of gay men around monkeypox. The same shaming we saw in the 1980s re-HIV. Lecturing people not to have sex isn't a public health strategy. It didn't stop HIV, it made it worse, and it won't stop monkeypox. What will work is vaccination, testing, and education. So, lecturing people won't stop monkeypox, but I'm sure he thinks lecturing people about masks and vaccines and closures in 2020, that's okay. Closing your church, beach, gym, people getting fatter, people getting more depressed, people dying of opioids at record, that's whatever. But, simply suggesting that homosexuals maybe keep the orgy parties to a minimum during the monkeypox pandemic apparently is just too much to ask for. Here's a compromise, Mr. Wiener. I will not go to orgy parties. I mean, I wasn't going anyway, but I will not go to orgy. We're all in this together. I'll not go to orgy parties. I'll not go to kink sex parties, and I'll I'll be abstinent. I have been anyway, just by choice, because I don't feel like having sex right now. I just don't get the same enjoyment I did in my 20s when I thought it was like a competition of how cool I was. Now I realize it's actually my sex organ to make children, and I think it's a lot less cool to be promiscuous than I used to. So I'm being a lot more selective and smart. It feels a lot better too. We're all in it together, Let's both be abstinent together, Mr. Wiener. How about you call for the whole gay community to be abstinent, and I'll call for the whole straight community to be careful and stay away from kink parties. We're all in it together. Oh, you don't want to be in it together. You just want us to suffer during the COVID pandemic for years and just not even pay attention to the collateral damage to lockdowns and forced masking. But now that there's this new outbreak, you're just talking about vaccination and education. You know who else is happy about the vaccination? Bavarian Nordic, the company that's at all-time stock highs, And this is the big little secret that they're not going to tell you. I'm not talking about Mr. Wiener, but in general, this is a new multi-trillion-dollar cash cow, guys. Emergency vaccine. The media's in on it. The media's scaring the crap out of people into running. They talked about this in 2019, by the way, in the government with Donald Trump's executive order, where they were like, there's not enough people getting their seasonal flu vaccine, and that's a bad thing. So they put together a whole executive order to bring all the government together to figure out how to modernize influenza vaccines and also get people to be vaccinated for the flu more. I'm not saying this is the flu. Monkeypox and COVID aren't the flu, but I'm just saying they knew enough people weren't getting vaccinated, and now I would say a record amount of people are getting vaccinated. Yes, for a different shot, but it's been modernized with mRNA technology, the COVID vaccines, and people are running to it. And now with monkeypox, I'm sure there's going to be millions of people who flock to that too. You have blue check mark professors / doctors calling for every incoming college student to get vaccinated for monkeypox. Do you know what a cash cow that's going to be? So this is the big little dirty secret that I'm just going to tell people. Big Pharma has swallowed up our government. Big Pharma has lobbied the Democrats. Big Pharma has lobbied the Republicans. They are factually the number one lobbying industry, health and pharmaceuticals, in Washington. Joe Biden has been absolutely swallowed up by them, and Donald Trump is a sleazebag vaccine salesman who plays controlled opposition leader and runs around the country acting like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna are so amazing. And Donald Trump doesn't want to criticize Big Pharma right now because he's working for them. He's like a salesman. He's their favorite little salesman. He's got the Republican Party, the small government, skeptical party, under an absolute spell. Good for you, Donald Trump. God's watching. He's watching us all, by the way. No one's above it, but you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. So they've lobbied the government. They got both sides of politics running around selling their products for the most part. Republicans are slightly more skeptical and not declaring as many emergencies now. They've swallowed up the media for the most part. The media not only won't question them 9 times out of 10, but they actually are like a hit team and shame anybody who does question them. In many cases, they've partnered with big tech, people like World Health Organization. They've done initiatives with little vaccine groups and stuff. And now on big tech, you can't question them. So they've created a whole new industry. And it wasn't just Biden, guys. Trump rolled this out. He rolled out the red carpet. He passed their executive orders. He signed Operation Warp Speed. He printed trillions of dollars. He rolled out the new normal. Donald Trump did, okay? It wasn't Biden. Trump rolled all this out, and Biden's rolling the ball further down the hill. And now they have this new system. Declare emergency, freak people out in the media, don't allow people to question on big techs, and then over the course of the next 10, 20 years, Big Pharma is going to make trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars. And the crazy part is some of the vaccines, like the COVID ones, were pushed out during an emergency. So they currently, I don't know when the PrEP Act is going to end because it does have an expiration date at some point, they have no liability for side effects, injuries, and deaths. They have the greatest deal in the history of deals. This is the greatest business deal for Big Pharma. Ready? In many cases, they get subsidized by the government to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. Companies like Pfizer that didn't get money from Operation Warp Speed, they at least got bought by the government, so the government purchased a bunch of their things. So it's like some of these companies are getting paid tens of billions of dollars by the government, and then some of those same companies that are and aren't getting paid are getting hundreds of millions of their doses purchased by the government, paid by the government, purchased by the government. It's all government socialism. Here's the money, then we'll buy the things that we, subsidize you for anyway. They buy hundreds of millions of the product, then the government is forcing people to take the product, or they can't have certain government jobs, so they paid for it. They paid for the purchase of the product. That's like a double payment to some of these companies, and then they force you to take it, and then these companies have a shield from the PrEP Act, so they don't have liability for side effects, injuries, or deaths. This is the greatest business model in the history of business models. They are going to make trillions of dollars over the next 10 and 20 years, and apparently nobody's even allowed to question that it's happening because big tech and big media is partnering with them to quash all criticism. And this is for the people that tell me, the reason that Trump funded them is because he's fighting them. No, guys, it's the complete opposite. He opened the portal for Big Pharma to swallow this country up for the next 3 decades, and nobody's coming to save you, and nobody's coming to stop it. He didn't close the door on them. He opened the door wider than anybody's ever opened the door for Big Pharma, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden's just letting him walk through the door that Donald Trump and his little sleazy, Big Pharma salesman that he put in government are doing. And it's not going to stop. It's not going to, you might not get locked down again. You might not have a mask mandate. But at this point, why would they stop? Declare an emergency, make money. Declare an emergency, make money. Scare the crap out of people with media, quash dissent. This is a system that's never going to stop until enough people peacefully and legally non-comply. And I'm telling you, people are going to suffer. I already know, one of my good friends said, I'm not going to get into specifics, but a lot of people are caving on certain things and just saying, well, I want to travel and I want to do this and I want to do that. And it's like, I get it. That's a short-term gain for long-term suffering. This is never going to end until enough of the population says no to the mandate, says no to the tyranny. And they're already starting to put in a QR code system. I've already heard reports or just like personal stories where it's not enough anymore to have that little dinky like COVID CDC card. That was the beginning step because they were too slow to get out the QR code system. Now in certain cases, you're getting denied entry to certain countries if you don't have the QR code scan. The physical little dinky copies was always going to be temporary until they got their computer systems. It's just the federal government and local governments are often so crappy that it takes them years to do what other people could do in months. They're slow and inefficient. That's why people vote for less. So it's like they're rolling out this system. It's not going away because Trump exposed them. Trump gave them billions of dollars, laid out the infrastructure, signed the CARES Act, and gave them the red carpet to roll out this new normal, and they're not going to stop anytime soon. I hope we don't go back to lockdowns. I hope we don't go back to forced masking, but at the same time, I actually care about our country as well. I don't think it's good to take away Special Olympians' rights. I don't think it's good to take away kids with speech problems, take away their face and their teacher's face. I don't think it's great to force people to do all this stuff, and I don't think it's great that Big Pharma is making trillions off of mandates and just constant emergencies that are probably never going to end. And this only ends when the party that we're in actually is real opposition. And I'm not saying DeSantis is perfect, but DeSantis every day is countering this. Yesterday, he's talking about the monkeypox emergencies. He's calling it out. You know who's not doing that? The controlled opposition guy. And I'm not saying DeSantis is perfect, but it's like at least he's doing something. We're not going to end this by funneling money to Big Pharma. This stuff is crazy. But, God bless everybody suffering from monkeypox. And once again, this is a public health policy. They don't care how fat you are. They don't care how many pills you're on. They don't care how depressed you are. They don't care how lazy you are. They don't care about root level solutions. They don't care about what you're eating. They don't care about how much alcohol you're drinking. They don't care about how much drugs you're doing. They don't care how unhealthy you are. And they don't care if our country spirals into another obesity health crisis like we're in. All they care about is making a bunch of monies, pumping you up like a factory farmed, animal on a conveyor belt to the slaughter. How many Pfizer shots did you get? How many monkeypox shots? That's their entire health policy. Vaccine, 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 vaccine. That's all they care about. And when they say education, they're not talking about education on how to take care of yourself. They're not giving you a free trip to a camp where you could lose weight. When they say education, they're funneling billions and millions of dollars to tell you to get vaccinated. They're not telling you a full scale. You can get vaccinated, but also here's how to take care of yourself. They don't give two shits about it. And I'm tired of the Republican Party being led by a sleazebag vaccine salesman. I'm not going to stand for it, and I don't care how much people get ticked off. I talk about it because the left wing is doing all this stuff, and our party's being led by a controlled op, just being like, yeah, Pharma's so good. I gave them big money, and everyone's like, Donald Trump gave Big Pharma big money. It's so good. It's so good for the country. It's like, no, this is, The emergencies are going to keep running through. It's the greatest business model in the modern world. No liability for side effects, injuries, and deaths. You get paid by the government, subsidized by the government purchases your product, and then they do or don't mandate it. As the media scares everybody, as big tech censors everybody, this is a multi-trillion-dollar business model, and you're out of your mind if you think the number one lobbyist in Washington, Big Pharma, is just going to randomly stop cashing out on this stuff. Yeah, right. Give me a break, folks. It's only going to happen when people wake up, and that's what I'm going to end on. It's personal responsibility. They can't sell crappy food if everybody doesn't buy it to the tunes. You know, supermarkets have gotten healthier over the last 10 years. Do you know why? It's called personal responsibility. People are more interested in certain healthy foods. Now they provide it because they make money off it. So we can't just play the victim. We have to do our part and create the world we want to see, because things have changed for the better in the food industry over the last 10 years. And in some cases for the worse, but in some cases it's gotten a little better because people are more interested in health now than they used to be. All right. Let's see. I'm going to read a few comments and then I'm going to keep it moving. Someone said, why won't Anomaly talk about Mitch McConnell, who blocked President Trump from cutting out the extra pork in the omnibus bill? I've talked about the omnibus bill before, but this is also like a straw man tactic. Like, you can't handle any sort of reality about Donald Trump that hurts your feelings because he's your idol. So you go back to an omnibus bill that I'm not even talking about. The CARES Act is not the omnibus bill. Operation Warp Speed is not the omnibus bill. Donald Trump doesn't march around and say, oh, Mitch McConnell blocked me. He's proud. He's proud of it. He's proud of the vaccines. He's proud of rushing it. He's proud of funding it. It's just people like you that can't stand up to him. You're like, oh no, there's a news analyst who's telling me the truth about both sides. Let me talk about a different bill because I don't want to talk about this. It's like, yeah, we could talk about Mitch McConnell another time. Mitch McConnell sucks, but like, dude, grow up. You know, get with the program. Not trying to be mean, but it's like, come on, dude. Someone said, you're good, you just misunderstood my intentions. I don't even know your intentions because I wasn't reading your comment, Tina, but God bless you. It's just getting stale. Someone said, literally shaking. I'm literally shaking, yeah, no. Now they're going to frame it like they did Trump and be like, he's making fun of people. I'm like, nah, whatever. Someone said, trying to make you feel guilty would be like what PETA does. I'm sorry, I'm a carnivore. I eat meat, so sorry, PETA. Someone said I wasn't talking to you, Anomaly. Okay, sorry, Tina. Your name is Tina Rude. Okay. Someone was talking to me, but it's okay. All right, read a few more, and then we're going to take it off. Someone said Pope Francis must be sued for telling the world to take the Fauci gene therapy. Well, I mean, I don't think he should be sued for that, but I don't know. No offense. I don't listen to the Pope. I'd rather listen to God, the Bible, you know, the Pope is not my guy. God bless him, but I don't trust him. He's not my leader, unfortunately. But how do I feel about Alex Berenson's take on the Alex Jones trial? It's harsh. It's harsh. Alex Berenson, if you guys don't know, he got kicked off Twitter. He sued Twitter and he settled and he got back on Twitter. Huge win for him. You know, he's saying he hopes Alex Jones basically, you know, he's happy Alex Jones is losing money and he hopes it goes further. These are like the gist of his tweets. It's a little surprising. I'm not going to lie. On one hand, I understand if you really think Alex Jones was doing defamation, but I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like wishing ill on Alex, so I wouldn't do that personally. But Alex, I guess, has a very strong stance about that topic, and he thinks Alex lied about it. So I don't know. I would never wish ill on Alex. I think Alex, in my opinion, has done in the past a lot of things that woke a lot of people up. But this is my honest analysis of Alex Jones as somebody that actually likes him. Like, I don't dislike Alex Jones. I do personally think, after watching it, I've seen him since I was like 18 years old, so I'm not a hater at all. But I do feel that Alex prioritizes selling his product over telling the truth. Like during COVID, I think Alex knows that if he hypes it up, he's going to make more money. So I think he's completely uninterested in telling the truth. And I do think that caught up to him, not specifically just with this case, just in general. I watched him during COVID because I wanted to see his take early in COVID, and he was overhyping the COVID virus like way too hard. So you get what I'm saying? And he had no shame with it. Like, he was basically like, say a prayer because we're all going to die. Like, that was the gist of what Alex was saying. I was listening, and he was basically telling his audience, like, we're all going to die. So, say your prayers now and get right with God. And then a couple weeks later, Alex Jones reads the data, and now Alex Jones is saying COVID's not that bad. They're exaggerating for the worst. But he also exaggerated. You know what I'm saying? If he was doing unbiased reporting and just trying to figure it out and made some innocent mistakes, it's not a big deal. But I listened to Alex overhype it, fearmonger the crap out of COVID, and then he ran people to his ads. So same with the guy Steve Pisnek, or whatever his name was, the ex-intelligence guy. He won on Alex Jones and spread this rumor about mass watermark ballots and how Trump was going to win because he caught the deep state with these watermark ballots, and he had proof that he was going to get every legal vote. Like, he had this whole theory that was false, and Alex Jones put it on his channel, and it got tens of millions of views, and it went viral, and everyone sent it to me. And then Alex Jones went on a podcast, I believe, with Eddie Bravo, and either Eddie Bravo or Sam Tripoli, I can't remember who, they asked Alex Jones about it. They said, Alex, do you feel bad about misleading people with that narrative? And Alex basically told him, like, no, I don't, like, I made a lot of money on that. That got tens of millions of views or whatever. So, I do think that Alex shamelessly cares about money more than truth, even though he does tell a lot of truth. He doesn't always lie. Big picture stuff, he's been right about so much stuff. You could fact check a lot of his stuff, and he's accurate. I'm not saying he's a bad person, but dude, I think morally you can't care about money and sales more than the truth. And I think Alex, after doing this for 20 years, has been programmed where if he can hype it up every day, the more he hypes it up, the more money he makes. So it's like every day is like nuclear explosion, we're all going to die. Like, he does that so often. Like, I'll listen in the shower as somebody that doesn't dislike him, and the vibes he gives me are so bad, because he's just like, nuclear explosion, we're all going to die, blah, 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 blah. Here, buy my products. And I like his products. I like a lot of his products. I've bought things from his store, and I give them a high rating. They're great. I still will buy the toothpaste. Personally, this is not a paid ad. I just like his toothpaste as a consumer. I like him as a person. I think he is a nice guy overall, but I think that's going to catch up to him, not just in this trial, but in like anything. I really think, I do think at some point he just decided to value business over truth, and he felt like if he told enough of the truth that he's allowed to skirt it a little bit because he does negative stuff. So, and that was Bill Cooper. If you guys know Bill Cooper, he was another quote unquote conspiracy theorist. Bill Cooper wrote Behold a Pale Horse, or whatever that book is. You can find videos. They're very similar, but Bill Cooper did not like Alex Jones, and he kept citing that Alex scared everybody on the radio and said some crazy thing was going to come that was never come. So maybe Alex has done this for decades, where he's right about a lot of stuff. He's definitely talking about some deep stuff that no one's talking about. But also, I guess that's always been a part of his business model, where he's not afraid to exaggerate and hype up a big fear-mongering event in order to, either cash out on it or mislead people. So I think he's been doing that for a while. I do think he still has a lot of value, and I'm not Alex Berenson. I don't want to see this guy's network go under, because I think, a lot of his co-hosts, and too, I don't think they're worse than CNN. They're just way more straightforward with it. Like, CNN's more like passive aggressive and sneaky. So, I don't want to see bad things happen, but I do. This is my personal take as a consumer and somebody that doesn't hate him. I stopped listening a while ago because I feel like he is willing to exaggerate just to hype up the fear. And that's just not my personal style. Some people like it. It's like if I'm getting a boxer and I'm ready in a fight, I'm listening to crazy music to pump me up. But on a day-to-day basis, I like to be pumped up, but I like to be calmed down. I don't want to freak out every day. It's not fun. It's not healthy. And, I'm not hating on the guy, but Alex doesn't seem like he's a healthy guy mentally, but, he's gotten a lot bigger, and he's very stressed out because he's got all this crap to deal with. I don't wish it on the world for him, but it's like, I think being this upset all the time is not good for your psyche. So I think, it's good to hype people up, but I think, over fear mongering every single day, all the time it's not healthy in my opinion to listen to. For me, I remember being in the shower one time because I'm like, I want to see what Alex is talking about. So I put it on and I'm in the shower and he's like literally like nuclear war. He said like 5 crazy things in a row that are super scary and just screamed it like it was going to happen, and then went to his ads. And I'm in the shower like, dude, I just woke up. Like, this is not good energy for me. So that's my personal just take on certain stuff like that as somebody who doesn't hate him. I'm not Alex Berenson. I'm not CNN. I've bought products from his store, and they're good in my opinion. And I probably still will. I mean, I want to support his store because he sells good products. I'm sorry. Like, if the media hates him so much, they should start selling better toothpaste. I don't like buying mainstream toothpaste. That's just my personal take. They're like, how dare you buy his product? It's like, you guys sell Taco Bell, pharmacy pills. Like, that you don't have the moral high ground on sales over Alex. Like, if you want to hate on his sales, they're like, he's selling a bunch of supplements. It's like, sure, there are some that are questionable, I'm sure, if you don't like those ones or you think it's a scam, but what are you selling? You get what I'm saying? I'm very cautious about what I sell. I sell these hats, I make them. I'm about to start selling something else that I've taken years on. The media does not have the high ground over Alex, no doubt. Appreciate you guys. I'm going to end on this comment. Someone said Alex should be free to say whatever he believes. The First Amendment definitely covers your right, but this has always been a thing with defamation. Me personally, I do think that if this were another topic or another case, I don't know that they would be going as hard against the person, and we will see what this leads to. Will this open people suing? If you question slavery now. You question slavery and someone determines that, their grandparents were slaves, and because you question the narrative around that specific event, they could sue you. Same with Holocaust stuff. Listen, in America, you have you will be destroyed by the media and you will probably be like, shamed into poverty, but, they can't send you to jail for questioning World War II. In Germany, you will rot in prison if you question World War II. America, that is, even Noam Chomsky used to talk about this. Noam Chomsky used to say, as a Jew, he would be like, I am not for this, but I will defend people's right in court to say it, not because I agree with it, Noam Chomsky used to say, because he's Jewish and, he doesn't like that, but he's like, I do value the First Amendment, and I will defend people in court from being charged for that. So that's all I'm going to end on this note without dragging on too much. There's a very slippery slope of like, what is defamation, what is not, and, defamation's one thing, but, charging Alex partially for, emotional distress via, challenging certain narratives, I mean, it's definitely going to open the door to a lot of different stuff that is going to challenge the First Amendment. But, just to be fair, the First Amendment's been a little janky for a while. You could still sue people like Nick Sandmann. You could still get sued like Alex Jones. You could still be Alex Berenson and win. And you could still be big tech that's skirts around the public-private law to somehow not have to follow it based on your guidelines. So I'm not saying it needs to be rewritten because I don't think it does. I think the First Amendment's great. But when it comes to the internet and like what the media says, if we had a real country that wasn't just completely a joke, we would all sit down. I mean, this is like kumbaya stuff that's not going to happen, but we would all sit down and really figure out what it is, because it's like, people on television defame each other all the time. They make jokes. Where does it cross the line? Because I could make a Kevin Hart joke, right, in a comedy routine, and I could make fun of him, and I could even exaggerate about him, but I can't get charged for it because it's a comedy routine. But Tucker Carlson, in many ways, he is a comedian, and he makes jokes. And Brian Stelter makes fun of Tucker Carlson. It's like they make fun of even tragedies. They make fun of people when like their spouses die. I'm not saying that's a nice thing to do, but, where does this become a legal issue? I mean, this isn't the first court case that has done this, because Nick Sam and others have, there's been other defamation cases, etc. But this, the way this is being worded and the multiple charges is, in my opinion, really drawing this slippery slope of like, I'm personally a non-litigious person. I think people should be able to question things, should be able to have their opinion, but without getting too kumbaya, I wish people actually cared about the truth. I wish people had respect for each other. I wish people valued reality over sports team stuff, and the reality is they don't. The media is insane. I mean, mainstream media, in my opinion, is way worse than InfoWars, and I don't say that with pride. I'm just saying, like, mainstream media sucks. The products they sell suck. Their message sucks. They, in my opinion, they incite people to do bad things. But I don't think they should be charged for inciting people. I just think they should get their crap together because they're evil. And I just want to shame them publicly. But, you know, should they be charged if they say crazy stuff and someone does something crazy? I mean, I don't believe that. So I also don't think Alex should be charged under that charge. Like, well, his audience did something bad. It's like, dude, millions of people do bad things all the time because they watch CNN and MSNBC. You know, Fox News and, you know, other people are not innocent either. They spread a lot of anxiety, you know. They spread a lot of fear and anxiety. When I watch Fox News, I don't feel comfortable. I'm not like, it's not like my live stream where I get out of it and I'm like, yeah, I try to calm people down and make them feel better and self-accountability. The world's always been crazy. You know, you don't want to freak out. You could have freaked out during World War II, the Cold War. There's always something crazy going on. I try to make people feel better about it while we combat it. But when you watch mainstream media, it's no different than Alex, where they're scaring the crap out of people all the time. So I wish that we could all come together and be like, hey, we all have a responsibility to not just lie and scare the crap out of people and freak people out and cause this division, but nobody wants to do it. And, you know, to be fair, mainstream media has been charged in the last couple of years. So if Nick Sandmann would have lost his case, I would have been like, yeah, it's never happened to them. They lost a crap load of money through that. So, you know, and I'm pretty sure Twitter must have lost money to Alex Berenson as well. So, it does kind of go both ways. But I do think Alex is getting, you know, I mean, he's like gotten to the level in the media of like Bill Cosby, where it's like, you know, not for the same reasons, but, you know, the Bill Cosby court case, like his public persona was so bad in the media, they were going to charge him regardless, in my opinion, of what happened in the court. It's kind of like Alex has reached that status for left-wing media where they have villainized him so much in the public that he was doomed from the beginning just because of like the public image. And I do think he got a raw deal compared to if he was someone else in a different category. But, you know, I hope the Supreme Court does look at it. And, you know, we do have to draw the lines of like, you shouldn't be allowed to defame people, but I'm not a litigious person. I don't like to sue. I wish people didn't sue all the time. I wish we could work it out with our words and actions, but apparently that's not the world we live in. So it's like my opinion on what we should do doesn't really matter because it's not feasible. You know what I'm saying? Media's not trying to come together. They're not trying to be honest, and everybody's got lawyers. They want to sue. They want to make money. It's like the Chuck E. Cheese situation. You know, there's a woman who is suing because she said Chuck E. Cheese was racist to her daughter because he didn't give her a high five. It's like, you know, this is the world we live in. Everybody wants to sue over everything. You know, it's just like so pathetic. I wish we didn't have to sue all the time on both sides, but, you know, I guess like if you're Nick Sandmann and they literally just ruined your life, you feel like you want compensation. If you're a mother and you feel like Alex ruined your life, I see where people are coming from ethically. It's just I wish things got actually settled. But the Chuck E. Cheese thing, like I'm reading the comments under it. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm reading the comments under it. One of the top comments is like this black dude, and he's like, "Yo, we need to support our own and stop going to Chuck E. Cheese and support our own businesses." And I'm like, that support us because it's so, you know, racist. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that would be great. I hope you do that because I'm not blaming everybody because obviously, you know, it's a small percentage of people doing bad things in this world. Most people are good people, but he's acting like, oh, Chuck E. Cheese is so racist and we need to support our own business. And it's like, bro, no offense, but I'm just going to be raw and honest. If that was happening in lower income black neighborhoods where people were supporting their own, you wouldn't have a massive murder rate. It's like most of the black murders are coming from black shooters and black killers. So it's like you act like everyone else is so bad. It's like, oh, we need to support our own. Like, yeah, you do need to support your own. It's deeper than Chuck E. Cheese, you know, going to a black, yeah, if you went to all black businesses and supported your own, the murder rate would be zero. I'm not blaming this guy specifically, but all these activists try to act like, oh, they hate us and, you know, we support our own. It's like, no, you don't though. You know, you go to a Korean neighborhood and they're not killing each other all the time. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just saying I agree with you that I would love people to start supporting their own in that way, because it would lead to, you know, kids not getting blasted on a weekly basis in Chicago, and letting them grow up like they should be allowed to do as God's children, and, you know, pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, versus a bunch of hypocrites who blame everybody else, and then they literally don't support their own in their own neighborhoods. And it's like absolutely a travesty. Like the issue's deeper than like a Chuck E. Cheese employee. But, you know, if you want to sue and act like that's the worst thing going on and lie, like whatever, you know, do what you got to do. But that's the world we live in. Everybody sues over everything. This coffee burned my hand, let's sue. This did this, let's sue. I get it. Everybody wants money. You know, if you get injured or something, you'd want money too. I get it, but I'm the type, I don't want to sue fact checkers. I just want them to correct themselves. I don't want to sue a media company that lies about me. I want them to correct themselves and learn their lesson. And I don't want left and right wing people to have to sue each other all the time. It's really annoying. But once again, I could sit here and act like if it were my world, everyone would be holding hands. That's not the world we live in. So who cares what I think? Because it's clearly not happening. So I don't know the answer. But let me know in the comments what you think. I tried to be as fair as possible. And, you know, overall, I don't think this is going to break Alex Jones. If this is as far as this goes, 4 million's not that much. And I think that, you know, in general, the parents got money and they could spend it on causes they want. And also, I believe Alex has enough supporters and loyal fans that he'll be able to raise that money in a second. But we'll see what it does to the First Amendment. We'll see how far they push it. And we should be very vigilant in a peaceful, legal way. I got to say that, or else they're going to be like, you incited violence. See, I try to be very careful nowadays without being too preachy. It's like, I get they're trying to frame me in a certain way. They're trying to make me look crazy. They're trying to make me look bad. I'm not saying that it's going to stop me from saying what I want to do, but in a weird way, I have been very cautious in an accuracy way. I always was. I think I always did this, but I do it even more now. And in some ways, it's like it makes me even more accurate, where I'm like, I wish everybody took this seriously, because then we would have like real journalism where they'd be like, this person's saying this. Like, I read you what CNN said. I read you what Austin News said. And I know, of course, Alex has something different, and most of my audience knows what he's saying, where it's like, of course, I have my opinion, and I tend to think that, you know, I tend to think that he got a raw deal. However, I don't know. I could be honest. I didn't follow the whole Sandy Hook thing. I don't know exactly what Alex said, exactly what they took out of context. You know, I read the charges. Some of them I get. Some of them I think are a little, you know, I don't think other people besides Alex would have got it. But, you know, I try to be as fair as I can and tell you what I know and don't know. But let me know in the comments. God bless you guys. Thank you for watching. And as always, this is the Dream Rare Podcast, live on Facebook, live on YouTube. Later in the day, it goes to BitChute and Rumble, and it goes to Spotify and Apple. But I'd much prefer people to watch on Facebook or YouTube, because that's helping monetize, and all these other ones don't really monetize. So God bless y'all. I'll be back soon, and that's what it is today. Appreciate it.